So we're here in Monte Carlo for the Rendez-Vous to September, and I'm joined now by Chris Donelan, who's CEO for Global Reinsurance at Sompo International. Chris, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a little while since the reinsurance industry's gathered here in Monte Carlo. How do you think it's going to react being back together again for the first time?
Yeah, I think 3 years of not being together has actually got people somewhat excited, somewhat muted emotions, because it's first time people have been together in this period of time. It's kind of unique because we're going through a changing marketplace, and then there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and people you haven't seen in a couple of years, at least live. So that's pretty positive. So I think overall, pretty positive environment.
And in terms of the environment that the reinsurance market is operating in, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we have interest rates that have going up, inflation that's affecting a lot of the product lines. We have a supply and demand issue in property cat. We've had social inflation, all these kind of things that are entering most of the lines of business. So for the first time, you have where you could have multiple lines of business in a harder territory than you've had in many years prior. So it's going to be mostly about supply and demand heading into 1/1 renewals.
So talking about a harder market conditions, a lot of people won't have operated in a truly hard market before. What kind of things can we expect, and what possible surprises do you think we might see?
Yeah, so in a relationship business that insurance is, and it's hard to when you don't keep up with the cost of the product, and then all of a sudden many years go by and you have now rising costs. And if you haven't been prepared for that, it's hard to talk to clients and to brokers and to your own staff of how do you have a effective communication where it's not a hostile event, but it's more of like, hey, this is what's happening, and we need to have some discussion about what the product needs to be priced at or structured or coverage terms, which hasn't really happened in many years. And most folks that have been in the business for the last 10 years have never gone through that. So it is an education process, but it's not the first time. The industry is very old. It's not the first time we've been through it, and we'll get through that again.
So what do you think a company that's going to succeed is going to look like in those sorts of environment?
Yeah, it's a good question. Success is measured by a lot of things, but if you're measuring success, how you're able to maintain yourself through a marketplace and being able to sell a message that to a client, to a broker, of why you need to do something, and may not like it, but if you're honest and fair about it, at least you give an option for people to make a choice whether they want to trade with you at whatever price or whatever structure going forward. And reinsurance does wait, and it's a very patient business. It does wait many years, sometimes why we get ourselves into this predicament of being behind. As long as pricing keeps up and with inflation overall, and inflation is high now, that doesn't mean it's going to be high 6 months from now or a year from now or 3 weeks from now. So it's really important not to overreact and just get a good feel for what you need to do to trade forward.
So talking about inflation, talking about the general economic situation, how are reinsurers going to react, do you think, in that respect?
I think it caught everyone off guard, right? But if you throw the idea that so much liquidity was thrown into the marketplace from a financial standpoint, it was only a matter of time before you're going to see rise in prices. And I think, when you want to talk in the beginning about lumber not being available for homes and the cost of labor going up and a tight labor market, that kind of creates a shock pricing into the just to stay even. You have to, you're talking double digit and increases of premium just to have the same book of business you had the prior year. And I think that's complicated because people weren't thinking that was going to play out this fast, right? But if you really look back on it, it was pretty obvious that we would have this potential come through. Offsetting that there's always an offsetting to if you view it as a negative. Sometimes it's not a negative, but interest rates have risen, so that gives you some little bit of a benefit also. So it's not just one side of the story. So as we continue, I expect inflation will tame over time, probably sooner than later, and interest rates will probably settle in, and we'll be still at historical low interest rates over a in the history. So
Chris, you're Chief Executive of Global Reinsurance at Sompo International. Tell us a little bit about how the reinsurance industry can remain a global industry.
Well, capital's global, and that's kind of what we are. We're a provider of capital. And if you subscribe to spreading risk around the world, I think that's why reinsurers are successful when they can maintain a spread of risk around the planet. So I don't see that changing.
And in terms of the risks locally and globally written, how does that work?
Well, if you're supporting clients in specific regional locations, it's local needs that you have to address, and you have to be accessible. So why events like Monte Carlo and meeting people live, face to face, is important, because a lot of us are separated by oceans. WebExes and Teams and all that kind of stuff was very good as a temporary. Imagine if that didn't happen, if we had a pandemic 20 years ago when we didn't have WebEx. There would have been a whole lot of different things going on. Like, how do you manage through not be on a phone? Submissions would be, I don't know, delivered by mail, whatever that is. It wouldn't be on a tablet. So in some ways, we're lucky the pandemic happened during this period of time where we can talk to each other 4,000 miles away on a video screen, real time. We can receive data and information. So it gave us a false sense of security of like, hey, we can continue this way. But meeting in person is where you get the feel for what someone wants to do and how they want to have a relationship long term.
Reinsurance, very much a people industry.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about the messages that you from Sompo International are bringing to Monte Carlo this year.
Yeah, we're really here to listen and see what our clients' needs are. And, inflation's top of everyone's mind, because the first thing that will hit the marketplace will be property cat. So we're trying to figure out how we get to a solution of what we would need and what our clients need without having such drastic measures that come in place. Unfortunately, when you don't price our product properly, and no one knows. I mean, think about it. It's a product that only like 20% of the population even touches. It's insurance is not really tangible, right? So the other 80% never have to deal with it. So it's hard to be able to explain. I need to keep up with trends when you're not paying losses, right? So now you get to the point where losses come, you haven't kept up with trends, high inflation, and then you have this explosion that potentially could happen. On top of that, you have supply and demand. People have retreated from the marketplace for whatever reasons they have, which are valid for them. And now you have a mishap and people need to buy more limit because of inflation just to stay even. So I think you need to sit and listen to how people are looking to solve it on the front end of how they plan on running their business.
And what do you think the industry can do to make itself relevant or maintain its relevance?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great business. It's over 400-something years old, right? It has very talented folks. We've gotten so much better at data analytics and understanding how that works. And that can keep the spikes from happening. So you don't have to have these. Inflation was a surprise, if you want to call it. That's creating a little bit of a spike that we wouldn't have had in the past. But if we can keep where we don't have to have these peaks and valleys by actually having earlier discussions. But we're in a marketplace. So if you're one of 100 companies and you're the only folks speaking about it, really won't have as much effect. But when people we have so much data, we share so much data as an industry, it should be pretty easy to have adult discussions.
Chris, thank you very much indeed for joining us on AM Best TV.
Thank you very much.
For AM Best TV, I'm Richard Banks.